Welcome to another episode of Slates and Koffee, where we are sitting back and taking a sip of the industry awareness, education, and nourishment. We are your hosts, Toy, Nneka, and Tequoia. We are here once again, stirring up, and taking a sip. Today we talk about glass shattering and the good old boys club. Ball. I'm in ATL, so I gotta say ball because that's what they used to say back in the to say back in the day. Ball. They come here, ball.
Wait, would that be like the Philly John?
No.
The opposite?
No.
No. I'm sitting
It's
this
boy.
out.
It's boy.
Ball.
Boy.
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 Boy. That's how you
Or if
say
you're
it
from
down
LA,
in the South.
I think they say boy. I'm sitting it out. I don't even know what I'm saying.
They don't say nothing. You don't know what they look like in LA. They don't say nothing. But out
I'm
here,
not from
the good old South.
Oh gosh.
Boy. Come here, boy. Anyway, let's get to it. So today, we're talking about glass shattering in the good old boy system. And not only is it in the entertainment, but it's pretty much everywhere in every other industry that we have here in America. I'm not sure how international does it, but I'm sure it's there too. I mean, whatever is how the country was created, I'm sure it's still standing on that same foundation. We're talking about industries that have the gatekeepers that have those certain affiliates in there that's kind of made it hard for others to enter into it, and until those individuals that came in, bless you, that made changes once they're into it and shattering that system of the old way of doing it. What do you guys think?
We're still working at it. Who was it? I forgot the name of the executive with Disney that just was let go recently. Female, queer female Latina. She was just recently let go by Disney. And they gave some, arbitrary reason why they let her go, which her counsel is fighting against because it doesn't make sense. So it's like, even when we do break through that glass ceiling and challenge the patriarchy and become a role model for other women, people of color, queer people, when we do have that role model, it's still being challenged. And in a lot of cases, people are still very much in jeopardy of losing their jobs because even though they've broken the ceiling, they're still in a precarious situation. So we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
As far as it pertains to the industry, I'm glad to see that, there's more women doing various things, whether it be directing, producing, even being on set sometimes and seeing them do camera work. Other things where when I first got out here, it was just strictly men. And you would see women in the hair and makeup, of course. But now you come on set and it's a bit more diverse. Obviously, this is very recent. But I'm not that high up in the production world, but I can only hope that is still being pushed, people still pushing to not just be present, but not being questioned and not being, I guess, babied and held with care in a sense, because the thing that has always bothered me about women or any group being I'm losing all my words, barred from whatever they're trying to do. What used to frustrate me is knowing that these people are qualified. And so to know that it's just an outdated system that is stopping you from achieving your full potential is frustrating. So again, I'm not in those rooms. I don't really know what it looks like at this current moment in the film industry. I just see here at the receiving end. So I have seen some women do great things, and it's very encouraging and uplifting. And sometimes I feel kind of helpless as an actor because I'm just the hire. And at all times you're going to have, women you're going to have women in a story. Well, I can't say at all times, look at Shakespeare back in the day. We weren't allowed to do it at some point, but in any way, like that I see it happening, I totally support it. I know I've put on productions by myself where I try to recruit people, and I've seen people undermine my position. I can't say for sure if it was because I was a woman, if it's because I'm Black or whatever. Not enough evidence there for me to really say anything to it, but it's just, I know what it feels like to be undermined when I'm trying to do what I know I'm qualified to do.
So yeah, it just takes us to making changes. We have episodes like this so we can build awareness on things that's going on. Nneka, you want to introduce our guest today?
Incoming right now is Cecilia Salinas. She's an actress. She's from Texas. Shout out to Texas, Texans. And we're going to see her perspective on Glass Shattering, the Good Old Boys Club, and then talk to her about certain projects that she's been up to.
Hi,
Cecilia.
how are you guys? Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so happy to see you again. It's been a minute.
I know it's been so long. Like seriously, I mean, this year has just gone by super quickly also. Like I'm having trouble keeping up with I'm like, oh, we're almost in April. Does my audio sound okay, or should I put in a mic?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
So we were just talking about Glass Shattering, our opinions on it. I gave some weird ramble because the topic frustrates me. But yeah, tell us about your perspective on it. I know we're in the industry, all of us. So is it something you've experienced either in this industry, in your life, in your culture? Like, what has it?
What do you mean by glass shattering?
I guess it can be talked about in different ways, but I guess in our specific conversation, we can make it specific to the industry. Mm-hmm. Spaces you've been in where you felt like you've been given a ceiling, or where you feel like you've shattered that ceiling, how you felt about it, how you went about it, or if anyone in your life has dealt with that as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say breaking, like for me, for instance, I booked a role in a short film that I'm really excited for. And it's a role that like kind of highlights both my Mexican and American side. That's not a drug dealer. That's not a maid. That's not, the stereotypical things that come with being Hispanic. I'm lighter skinned. I'm not as dark. And so all of these things, I feel like this short film really kind of made me more comfortable with my career and who I am and where I'm going with my career, if there's even a chance with it, just because I have dealt with a lot of like I said, you don't look Mexican enough, you don't look this, you're too tall, and all these negative stereotypes that slowly are kind of going down, but at the same time, we're still really behind, especially in the entertainment industry. Like, I get it, the whole cartel stuff is, very exciting and, it's entertainment, but it's also glamorizing a lot of horrible stuff that's going on. Ultimately it results in people wanting to join or wanting to do this and so it's just kind of like, anyways, back to like my role. It's kind of like a movie that emphasizes both my Mexican and American side, and I'm really happy for it because every single cast member doesn't look like the stereotypical Latino that you would see, and it has nothing to do with any of the stereotypes that I just mentioned. And also in another short film that I booked, it's about a Mexican American household specifically, and like the ups and downs and the machismo and the this and the that. So all of these films are kind of like, I guess, my way of starting that breakthrough of like kind of pushing that narrative out of the way of like, oh, you don't look this, you're not that, da 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 da. In result, you're not going to get anything. And so I hope that, once these come out, they kind of like, sorry about that, they kind of just like take away that stereotype. But like I said, Hollywood is like, this is just the very, very, bottom of the iceberg, where we really need to just like go full force and give more Latino opportunities, like a better picture of what a Latino and what Latin America has in store and what they offer.
So since that it's the executives at the top that green light these projects,
which are white males.
which are so we're trying, well, I'm not going to say weird. I'm not an executive, but the studios, they put out these programs for like executive training programs to try to get more diversity at the executive levels. Do you feel from your perspective that that's a performative act, that they're just doing that to show that they're diverse? Or do you believe that they have the intention of actually hiring and giving power to these diversity hires so that they can implement change in the Hollywood machine?
Mm-hmm. I think honestly, it's a little bit of both. I feel like in a way it is very performative because nowadays with social media and the internet, there's no silencing anybody. So it's kind of their way of being like, all right, we'll do this. But in reality, it's like performative, but at the same time, I think they're also testing things out to see how it hits with numbers and this and that, and kind of maybe going an alternate route. Also because you have projects recently like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where diversity was huge in that, and it ended up winning everything. And so I feel like there's some people that do it for the performative aspect of it, but there's also a lot of other people that genuinely have hope and are kind of tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. But yeah, I would say it's like 50-50.
I would actually also add, I always say when it comes to the film industry, the 90s lasted only 10 years because we had a lot of diversity back then, and a bit in the 80s as well, but I grew up in the 90s. So, you know, we had a lot of diversity in the 90s that I grew up with. And then come year 2000, they were all scrapped, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think it was Tequoia, you were just talking about people up on top, you know, they're the ones who made that decision. And it's not like they were diverse back then. These were still the same white male, for the most part, people in charge back in the 90s when it seemed appropriate to have the diversity. And then when they figured they've had enough, it went away to the point where we had to come back and really fight for it again, like we did in the past 10, 15 years. So when we say performative, I feel like we need to be very good about putting that out there, being like, hey, this can't be something that's just here today. I think one of the good ways to measure that is seeing, actually, I really love that you said it, Tequoia, about people having programs. And so like people get hired, but are they just here for that program and then they go off and they still don't get any connections or get hired? Because I remember hearing a couple people complain from this group that I'm a part of, and they had this program and they were choosing people from our group. But then after a while, people were coming back and saying, I don't see the point of this, because we were doing the homework and we found out that none of these people that were picked for these programs actually had any long-lasting business ventures, especially with this organization. And so that was performative. And so it takes time to see what the true landscape is going to look like. Time will tell if these changes are legitimate or just to appease the people for right now, so, you know, they don't get all up in arms. And so it's, you know, when you see change happen like we do right now, a lot of what we've been talking about in the past couple of interviews, at least I know on my end, I do sprinkle in like, oh, well, not right now. Right now, it seems to be different. It seems to be changing in the moment. But we need to make sure to keep our foot on the necks of these people, because the moment we let up because we see certain things change, it's only a matter of time till it slowly slides back and ascends into what we had before. Why? Because they're still at the top. And I mentioned earlier about power. I think it's really difficult to displace people in power because they've had it for a minute. It is well oiled. They know how to pull strings. So I don't know if I mentioned it in the money, you know, and I don't know if I've mentioned it here before. I'm really big on, it's difficult, but I'm big on creating insurance within the community we want to grow with. Because if you keep leaning on this thing that already has their system set up and you want changes made and they don't feel if they're not aligning with those changes, it's going to be hard. And they'll make, little avenues here and there to appease people. But over time, I don't think you're really going to see the true change you're going to see with the wrong people at the head of it, So I say, build our own thing. I'm not just saying Black people or just Latino people, but just people of the same accord. This is what we want. This is the type of roles that we want. This is the type of spectrum we want to see within this, like you were talking about the Latinos being viewed in a certain light. Show that there's a full spectrum of this. Show that this is what this really looks like, or this culture really is like, and stop having to defer to someone else who doesn't even know about that. I say concentrate on an industry with people who want to create and build on our own backs so that we can make those decisions. This way, glass shattering wouldn't even be a situation because we're here respecting everyone in that room from the jump.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's like, say you see a castle, right? And you're trying to break into this castle, right? And the first floor is kind of like probably 100 feet up. And then you got guards at the front, you got guards on the top, you got guards in the back, right? Until you start to create or make your own house across the street. And then you invite everybody else, your community, you build a store next door, the castle is going to come to you.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't want to come up in here? This is Queen Elizabeth. You don't want to come in this? So then you get their attention, or what are you guys doing over there? I'm interested.
Exactly.
Everybody's going over there. No one's really worried about coming over here. So you said it, Nneka, you have to build your own, continue to create your own, build the community around it. And that's when the higher ups or the machine comes to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to add to that is just in the Latino community, it's very well known that everybody's very judgmental. And in Spanish, we call it criticones, which means like you're very critical of other Latinos. And it's a big, big issue as to why our community doesn't really grow together. They kind of just like go off in their own thing. Like, oh, well, that show is just people from Venezuela, so I'm not going to watch that. Like, I only support my Mexicans. Or, oh, this is just a Cuban thing. And so it takes also, at least in the Latino community, and I've noticed it so much, especially from my hometown, like how just against each other everybody really is. And slowly it's getting better. I have noticed a little bit of improvement in regards to kind of just uniting as Latinos in general, but we are still far, far away, like very far from like actually getting to where we could actually help each other and build that community, like you said, and kind of like, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of just like the way the Latino culture has kind of been. It's almost like ancestral, what is it called?
Patria.
Yeah. Where it's like, it's just passed down through generations of just being raised to, judge that person. Oh, that person doesn't have this, and then this, and then that, and then colorism comes into play too. And so there's just a lot of internal things going on with specifically the Latino community. And I'm sure it happens with other communities as well, that just kind of get looked over because they just kind of see the oh, you're Latino, do this. But it's like there's really an internal battle between everyone. And it's really affecting the progression of things.
And I think you bring up a good point. Both you and Nneka, in a sense, you honed in on one major component to being successful in this industry and changing the narrative and breaking through and being successful as a community, that there is no unified voice, because there has to be a collective voice that's going to put pressure on the patriarchy in order to do what they're supposed to do, because they're not going to voluntarily they're not going to voluntarily give up power.
In a perfect world.
If they don't have to extend an olive leaf or open a door, they're not going to. Exactly. But it's the adamant demands and the voices that put pressure on them that demand change that's going to actually create it. So I think that is something that we've seen, in and out throughout the course of history within the Black community, where you had the civil rights movement, and then like in the 1980s you had the Rainbow Push Coalition. You had groups of people throughout the history of America that have put pressure on the government and corporations to do better. But then when that voice quiets down is when, they revert back to their old habits and we get lack of diversity.
Kind of like with
As
the
far,
Oscars, for instance, how they were, pushing Oscar so white, finally,
right,
and then it just stopped. And then everyone,
right.
for the past couple of years, it's just been white people. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, but continue.
Toy and I have learned of the Asian American community that have created a very powerful coalition that is pushing Hollywood to recognize more Asian American actors and directors and screenwriters. I think that I honestly believe that we are more powerful together than we are segmented. I think that if the minority, I hate to use minority because we're not a minority, we are in the majority. If the marginalized community as a whole came together and stated that we're tired of being relegated to the sidelines, we collectively want to see more diversity that better represents us as a nation, as opposed to Oscar so white, I think that they would be forced to listen, because right now we're not as powerful as we could be. We're just not. Everybody's honed into their own little section, and it's not really making a significant dent in the industry.
I think we're more fractured now than we ever have been, actually.
I'd agree. Yeah.
I think the passion lacks a little bit, because
I was going to say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I don't even think we know how strong we can be if we truly all unite. Like, it's almost like I think we'd be unstoppable, but it's almost like the fear and the lack of, confidence in people, and just laziness also is a big one. A lot of people love to talk, but will you actually do something? That's another thing. And so I genuinely don't, I feel like we don't even know how strong we can be, which is interesting to think about.
I mean, it took all the activists like Cesar Chavez and, Martin Luther King, but it takes, in this time and age, not that many people have that much fight in them, because I really believe they would have walked by themselves. But of course, they preach that it happens in numbers, like we need each other. And yeah, but I know for the Asian community, there's a whole community. Like, there is no competition. They work together. And certain other minority groups, that's an issue with us. Like, it's, if she made it, I don't want to make it, or if she made it, it's not fair, so I'm done. So I think a lot of egos need to be checked too. There's a lot of kinks in the system.
Yes.
Big one.
Yeah. I think actually when you say Asian community, it's so funny because obviously I'm not Asian, I'm not Latina. So, what you just said before, by the way, Cecilia, is new to me. I didn't even know that was going on in the Latino community.
The internal criticism. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like,
why do you think no Latino shows ever get, taken to season 2, taken to season 3? Because everybody is so, why'd they make us look like this? Well, why do that? That makes us look poor. Just like all this stuff that they're just like
hypercritical.
Yeah. And also this is another interesting thing really quickly, is that how whitewashed, coming from a town that's 98% Hispanic, like everybody there is basically Mexican, how whitewashed everybody is. And that's just in one little town because of the media that we grew up with. Like, all we would see was blonde hair, blue-eyed people on the media. And there's half of my friends back at home are all fake blondes, majority of them end up naming their kids something like Waylon or Kaylin or, instead of something traditionally Mexican. And so they tend to focus and like specific things on, in film and in television on that are mainly just white people. And it's something that I've noticed since I was over there, of like the obsession with it and how no one really truly embraces who they really are. And they end up, talking smack about when they actually see their culture portrayed on television, they don't like it. And they're like, oh no, that's disgusting. We don't, and it's like, that's our culture. Like, just accept it. And so it's just the media whitewashing, because there was no other standard on TV, that everybody just kind of still to this day has that mentality. And it's really, really upsetting and disappointing.
I think
Oh,
no, you go ahead, Nneka.
I was gonna say, actually we were talking in another interview about I look at the internet. I mean, internet is really the highway to the combination of all these cultures. I was talking about my own heritage, Nigeria. Growing up, it was Nigeria. And then it's not like they just got the internet, but I guess it became more accessible to like the households throughout the lands. And the last couple of times I've been back, it was very westernized, very American cultured. And I think on a bigger scale, I think that's going to lead to something, a completely different situation, I feel, where it's going to be a huge culmination of a lot of the cultures, maybe America at the head, because they really, for some reason, they rise above as far as everyone trying to be like them and emulate them. But I also see America taking from other cultures as well. I see it here and there. And on an individual basis anyway, you see people who are into other cultures who happen to be American. But I was also going to say for the Asian culture as well, and I could be wrong about this, but from what I heard from other Asian people, they also have the situation too, where like, depending on your nationality, like whether you're Japanese or Korean or Chinese, they too kind of like have their specific dynamic with the different nations around them in Asia. But the one thing, I think this is the case, the one thing I definitely have to commend them for is, even though they possibly have these factions against their different countries, they do seem to come together here in a land where they are marginalized or a minority. They come together regardless of that difference they have back at home. And I think that's a power that we would very much benefit from. One could easily point and say they definitely have their own system in place here in this country that's not an Asian country, and that takes dedication. And I think the thing that we lack, and I'll speak specifically to the Black community, because we have a lot of history with Martin Luther King and the civil rights era and the slavery era of people banding together because they had a very specified vision and they had higher stakes. By default, they had higher stakes. They literally had their lives that they were fighting for. Right. We are at a place where things are so much more comfortable. You were talking about laziness, Cecilia. I think it is lazy. That's definitely a word, but it's also just comfort. We're at a place where things are just so comfortable. You want change, but are you willing to sacrifice to get that change? Because with change comes sacrifice. Exactly. If it's a radical situation, you're going to have a radical answer to address it. And I'm not talking radical as in violence. No. I'm just saying the size of the issue has to be, the answer has to be, sizable as well. And it has to be consistent. And people aren't willing to put in that, they're not willing to commit to that. And I don't say that in any negative way. There's a plethora of reasons why they don't. But I always just put out there, if the change is really wanted, people have to come together, have that unified vision and get to it. And I even say this to myself, because I say that, but then I think sacrifice. Am I willing to sacrifice? What does that mean for me? Is that something
easier said than done, for sure?
Easier said than done. What are the other avenues? And I think that's another thing too that people tend to defer to. What are the other avenues? I don't like this main thing that's going on in the mainstream, but what are the other avenues where I don't have to make a definitive sacrifice, but still get my own for at least me and my people, which is still an answer, but doesn't change things on a whole scale, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
I think part there is definitely comfortability aspect to it, but I think that there is also pushback by certain people in various communities that don't feel that change needs to be made. And there may be some subterfuge going on to combat the work that we're trying to create to build a more diverse and representative community and industry. And if, like Cecilia said, if there is a segment of people in the community that they are well assimilated, they are whitewashed, they feel that the representation that is currently out is sufficient, then they're going to work against anything that we do to try to make substantive changes in the industry. And I think that that's going to be an uphill battle for us as a collective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've noticed that where like I said, like they don't like to see, they complain, they love to complain, as everybody does, but when it actually happens, and for instance, I'll bring up the show Salinas, the series, the Netflix series based off the singer, that should have been something just like the original Salinas movie with J-Lo. That blew up. Like it's such an iconic movie. It's such an amazing thing. Everybody loves it. But yet back then, they weren't picky about, oh, well, J-Lo's not Mexican American. She's Puerto Rican. But they didn't care. They didn't care. All this stuff, right? Now, with the new Netflix show, I don't even think it got picked up for the third season, I think. I think it only lasted 2 seasons.
Oh, wow.
The comments that I was reading were all just like, we don't need this. Why don't you just let her rest? And I don't know what. Not that they were even like bashing Salinas. They didn't do a bad job at all with the show. It was really good. And they were just all very angry. And they were all Latinos in the comments, and all the negative, the ratings were down. Nobody wanted to watch it. I had friends of mine that were also like, oh, dude, I don't want to watch that. That looks super gross. And how could they even think of like replacing and and going, and I'm like, and saying that, oh, because the main girl's Colombian, she's not Mexican. Now they're starting to bring that in. And so all of these things, and it's just kind of like, just support it, like it's still a Latino story being told. Support it, watch it, and then from there we'll transition into more and more and more, and you'll you'll get your chance to like what you watch. But it's just kind of like they shut it down immediately. It got canceled. She didn't even get any like recognition that she should have, because she did a fantastic job at playing Salinas. She looked identical to her, and that was another thing. Oh, she's too skinny, she's too this, and then and they were all from Latinos, which is insane. And I mean, that's mainly the demographic that would watch that, because mainly Latinos know about Salinas and whatnot, and they were all just like, and just because I guess they didn't want to adapt to a change in the traditional Salinas story, maybe, but it was very disappointing and almost like kind of like disheartening, because I'm in the industry, and it's like, what if I was to book some show or whatever that has to deal with that, like what is the repercussions of that? And I don't know, it's just kind of like, it's such an ongoing thing that I hope it changes, and I hope the communities kind of, like we were talking about, kind of unite together and kind of just support each other. But I don't know how that could
materialize.
I wish I had the answer, but
I remember back in the 90s when the movie came out. It was like early 90s, and it was the same issue. They were mad that it came from the Spanish community. They were mad that J-Lo was Puerto Rican and that she was playing a Mexican role. Didn't matter that she blew it out the water. Like, the movie was great. Like, it reached out to all generations, all cultures, because of the artistry that she brought to it. And that's when her career actually launched. It is not just that community. It's we're talking about just other communities, people. In a nutshell, people, we need to get it together. It's like having that angry auntie or angry uncle. Like, it's always going to be somebody that's not happy with something, but we don't depend on them. Our mission is to push. How bad do you want change? We don't depend on the community. We just going to have to grab from other communities to come and help us push this agenda.
Do you guys feel like social media kind of doesn't help with it, or does it help with the unity and the kind of progressive change that we need to see? Because I'm kind of like split between, I don't know if it helps, but at the same time, it does bring a lot
I
of,
believe it does. Yeah.
I think it's both. I'd say it's both. I think we were talking about it in another interview, like the social media definitely has its place. Lots of voices have been heard. People have been able to speak their piece, speak their grievances, which I think is very useful for. You got a platform, you know, and people are listening. It can also be used as a weapon as well, which is an issue, you know. I think it's just something that's going to come with the turf. You know, you have something new and it's unregulated. There's going to be good. There's going to be bad.
Back then in the 90s, we had TGIF. We held down channel. I don't know. We had that one channel.
UPN. We had UPN,
we had
WB,
Color, we had
Fox.
Google, we had, I think Cosby did that in the 80s. Like he catapult that movement for the 90s, and they seen how it's all come to money. They seen how they were buying into Cosby, different worlds, and whatever he did in the 80s. And then all this wave of Black television came in the 90s. Like everywhere you looked at, it was Black. It was part of a Friday sit down or a Sunday sit down.
I do feel like back then, I feel like it had more of a kind of an actual like end result, because it was more outside of the internet world. And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I kind of feel like the internet world, like, yes, you're able to kind of like help things out, but at the same time, it kind of stays in that world. And it's like a lot of people who talk and this and that. It just kind of stays.
No material change.
Yeah, there's really nothing that goes past the internet like wall of like, oh yeah, you were saying all this, but it's like, what's happening over here? Nothing. There's really no change as much as there is in the internet. So it's kind of like I feel like that's why the movements kind of picked up a lot more, because there was more action rather than just speaking or typing something out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's super easy to just say something.
Yeah.
I honestly think that if we had Twitter back in the 80s, the the Cosby Show would be shut down. I think that Twitter and IG and TikTok is just a bullhorn for the most ignorant people. And
everyone hides behind the screen. So
yeah, and I believe that the executives at the top, they read the worst comments and use that as justification to shut down shows.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but on the flip side, comments help you shop a show.
True. It can. It definitely can.
Yeah.
If the support is there,
but if you guys want to go even deeper than that, what's kind of really messed up is that majority of these comments that are putting like hateful things, for instance, are bots.
Oh yeah.
And so that's where that starts coming into play, and you won't stop the bots, and then people will start arguing, and then it just becomes this huge, just like mess of just what is going on in this comment section thread. Like, is this really something that we should use as knowledge and different input on the specific thing? And it's like, because half of these people are just bots, and it's just weird to think about, because nowadays I don't believe anything that I mean, not anything, but it's just kind of like, you know, I see
you definitely have to check everything,
and I'm like, how can you really say that? And then I think about it, I'm like, it's probably just, yeah, that whole bot thing goes super deep. I went down a rabbit hole the other day about all that stuff, but we won't get into that here. But yeah, it's just like, it's almost like two completely different worlds. You know, I don't want to say it is two completely different worlds, but it kind of like the internet world and like
the real world.
Yeah.
I think the fact that this term or this phenomena, fall outrage, the fact that it was even coined, because it's something that's people literally looking to pick a fight or have an issue with things that are not issues.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I keep hearing it on the internet. So I hear about it here and there. But I noticed it too, you know, you have people trying to have problems with things, but then it's like, okay, well, what about on this side of it? You know, and they, in a sense, become hypocritical, or they want to pick and choose things to be upset about. And so the fact that that is a thing in and of itself just goes to show you that people, not everyone, and maybe it's not even necessarily an intentional thing, but there's a part of human nature where people just want to go to battle. And therefore, it doesn't help that they have a speakerphone that we call social media, and that it's a thing that it doesn't help that people like to be on a bandwagon either. So it's just important to keep that in mind, that a lot of what you see, there's like a snowfall of like support or snowfall of chastisement that people just join because they can, because it's the easiest thing they can do. Like you were saying earlier, people just talk, but there's not so much call to action. Social media is good, I think, for awareness, but there's not so much call to action. Unless you're one of those people who are looking for that, then you will find it from other people who are using that tool in a productive manner. But on the grand scale, I think social media, besides the social aspect of keeping up with your friends and stuff, is just geared towards putting info out there. And everyone has access to it. So you're going to get a motley crew of different facets of the social media world.
It almost promotes performative activism and performative everything, just because you want to be on the right side of internet history. And so, because if not, you're going to get barked at and yelled at by everybody else who doesn't agree with whatever specific thing it is. And so it's just kind of like for instance, with the Black Lives Matter movement, there were so many influencers who were literally brought out photographers just to snap pictures of them protesting, and they'd go home afterwards. And it was just so they could post that picture with the sign and then not do anything after.
To see that they did their part.
And post the black square. And they were like, oh, look, I can't get canceled. And so the internet really pushes and promotes that kind of behaviors in especially, I don't want to single them out, but like especially in white people, because there's such a, I don't know, it's just kind of like they want to now be activists and like help and lift people up. And don't get me wrong, there's many that actually do care and want to change and want to promote this stuff, but there's still all the other ones that only, one, care about themselves, two, how they look, not about the actual root cause of everything, and how their image on the internet looks. Because they could be a total racist shit human being in person, but yet are reposting and posting all of these things and so it's like, it's very hit or miss with the internet. And that's why it's just kind of like, I don't know where this is going.
We went from glass shattering to social media.
I know.
But I mean, it does tie in though. It definitely ties in because
it's making an impact on, interpretations of different cultures and this and that. And TikTok is a huge one on that, of showing how, different lifestyles, different this, different that, and seeing like raw emotions. You hear someone with your same accent, and then you see someone that grew up with similar things as you did. And so it's just kind of like, there's pros and cons to everything. And so, and it's kind of like, I feel like specifically on TikTok, you see more of a reflection of you than on any other social media platform, just because it's so raw in a way. And Instagram has just become this, let me just post what I want you to see type thing.
And walk away from the keyboard. I will say though, in talking about social media, specifically TikTok and Instagram, where people have been able to capitalize to the point where they've created their own career out of it, completely untraditional, unorthodox career, to the point where they're making money. I mean, putting in the work, but making money that's comparable to certain actors in this industry, working actors. And so I think if anything, it just hit me right now, that's also a form of glass shattering, because you don't really have any. I think they're trying to form a system about it now, and especially the industry. I think they're trying to get their hands on it. Where there's money, they want to be a part and dictate what happens where. I think there's a bridge that they're trying to make for that. But I think at least in its inception, there was far more room to call your own shots, whether you were a man, a woman, Black or white. You were doing your own thing and doing it to a certain degree, unapologetically. I mean, if you're getting sponsors, you kind of have to follow some rules, but you'll find the sponsors that cater towards what you're already doing. And so it's good to see that people were utilizing that and stepping outside of the traditional system, at least in the industry-wise, traditional industry system of making your own career, putting your own content out there, and doing it according to your own rules.
I've also kind of heard, well, this is why I've been confused with like acting and social media and how they merge, how they can benefit each other, and how they can actually be of good use, right? How can social media be of good use? So you from what I've heard is that I've heard sides of, yes, TikTok helps you a lot, and then you see all these, TikTokers on red carpets and this and that. And then I hear from another side that, oh, they won't take you seriously in the industry. If
Yeah.
you're a TikToker, Instagram, or influencer, they'll just call you an influencer. And even comments online will be like, well, why are you putting influencers in movies? Why are they on red carpets? Why are they this? So they don't want to kind of, it's like I said, it's always going to be something that someone's mad about. And that's why it's kind of confusing for me, at least. And I've been trying to, should I take TikTok seriously? Should I take YouTube seriously? Should I take this?
Do you?
And it's just kind of like all of these different opinions and comments and things that I see. And it's just like, what is like,
I would definitely say, do you? Because I think we're looking at a wider aerial view. They're trying to plug in a lot of influencers because they come with the fan base. But there are not a number, it's not that much. There's a few of them that I've been following, some since Vine, some I've only seen in TikTok, but they're serious at least about their acting craft. And they're going in and putting the hours to learn that craft and getting booked on things that are actually respectable. People don't want to respect them because they went in a different way and are now crossing over. But if you go about your business and doing it the way that you would as an actor, which you've already been doing, that's going to be clear. They'll be like, you have a resume, you have training, you go on screen and you actually can act, and so you're not just there because you have a following, you're there because you deserve it. But if you also want to make TikToks too, do your thing, girl. I think we're in that time period right now.
Much work. I have so many. Making a TikTok is hard. Like,
oh, girl.
Like I got so
we're past the dance steps.
About but it is a good outlet. I mean, regardless, like we were saying, pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
There's always going to be someone mad about something, and that's something that I feel like also as actors, we have to really engrave into our heads, like we cannot please everybody. Like we are never going to please everybody. And there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you do, doesn't like your eyebrows, doesn't like your ears, doesn't, just something. And so at least for me, I have to kind of like really, really put that into my head and, stop people pleasing, for instance, and just kind of realize that you're not going to please everybody. And it's a big thing that actors, I feel, have, just because we're always trying to impress somebody. Whether
we're not trying to piss certain people off who can hire us.
Yeah, or watching out with what you say and this and that. So it's like, if you say something and someone doesn't like it, it's kind of one of those things, like, don't lose sleep over it.
Yeah, that's so
All
true.
right.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. We definitely have ran over, but it was well worth the conversation.
Did we? Oh, we did.
It was it was like 2 hours. But it was.
I could go on all day.
I'm more than full. It's like Thanksgiving dinner I just had. So and the flow was amazing. The information, the awareness, the education, the activism on what we need to do in the communities were so amazing. We thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Oh my God, this is my first podcast ever. So I'm like,
yes,
so fun. I love it.
Like, I know
all
girl.
the time.
I know a woman we can bring on here.
What?
I was like, I know someone we can bring on here.
And I will not stop talking. That's the
downfall. Great information. Great information. Is there any
likewise? Like everything, all the points that you guys brought up and everything is just very, it opened up something in me that I didn't really see before. And it's kind of, now I really want to put that into motion of just like, the career trajectory overall in my life. And so, yeah, thank you guys. This was so much fun.
Educate, nourish, and empower.
Yeah. And that's exactly, I'm not kid you not, that's exactly what I feel right now.
Oh my goodness. It's all about the seeds being dropped.
So insightful. Like all three of you are just great. And I feel like I could talk to you forever just because I love speaking with people that have actual insight and input and different and this and that. So thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
What is your social media handle so the audience can follow you and your future projects that you have in store for us?
It is Cecilia, Cecilia, and then the letter L. And then my last name, Salinas, Salinas. And that's it.
And any future
Awesome.
projects you're working on right now that you want to let us know about?
We'll just call it, I'm on a little dry kind of area right now. I am waiting on a lot of different projects, not a lot, but like 3 different projects that I feel can really help catapult my career in a way. So it's kind of just, I'm in that waiting period of just like, I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know what it is. Da, da, da. And then it's just, I'm mainly focusing on like my kind of the job to pay the bills, essentially. So I'm trying to find just different little job things. But other than that, it's just the waiting period. And hopefully in a couple months, things will be different. But as of now, it's just been like, call back this and that, but not actually getting it. But I feel like I'm close. So we'll see.
We always like to call the waiting period the preparation period, because
That's
you're
a good way of putting it.
for the next level.
And at times you feel like kind of just like, what am I doing? This,
Yeah.
it's just, and especially when things just aren't working out for you, I always feel like whenever that happens, something is about to happen for you that is like out, you won't even expect of what that result will be.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to engrave in my head, because it never fails to not prove that to me. So we'll see.
It never does. It just comes through like an outpour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your time so we can speak with you and nourishing us as well.
Thank you guys. It's been
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Well, that was amazing. We are now wrapping up the episode of Glass Shattering, the good old boy system. It was a pleasure. So for now, guys, I hope you are nourished, educated, and empowered. And next time, come back and take a sip of Slates and Koffee. Bye.
Bye.